Okay, as people come in, we will go ahead and get started. I am Karen Ellis, as you all may know, my Pali people. I am the Director of College Advising for Pali High. And tonight we're going to have a presentation on understanding international colleges. Our presenter tonight would be Zach Einerson. I hope I said that correctly.
That's correct, yeah.
And he is our presenter. He will be on after the presentation to answer any questions. I will not, but let's go ahead and get started. To tell you a little bit about Zach, Zach has been active in international higher education admissions and recruitment since 2004. While earning a bachelor's degree in history and political science from Colorado State University, he studied abroad in Prague, the Czech Republic, St. Petersburg, Russia. Zach also has 2 master's degrees and expects to earn his PhD from the University of St. Andrews, Scotland this year. He has traveled to nearly 100 countries and all 7 continents. So let's listen in. Like I said, he will answer questions at the end of the presentation. And we ask that you put all your questions in the Q&A rather than in the chat so that he can address them at the end. So let's have fun and listen in. Go ahead, Zach.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that. Nice introduction. Starting off here, I'm very sad actually that I don't get to see all of you. Hopefully you're there out there listening. And I'm like was said, I'm happy to stick around and answer some questions. We're going to go over some what I find very interesting information and things that hopefully you'll learn something and might pique your curiosity to learn more. So to talk a little bit more about my background, I from the beginning of my education, my undergraduate education, and even in high school where I volunteered overseas in Kenya and Brazil, it really started back then. So this intentional international education kind of follows me through my undergraduate and then all the way to my master's and PhD, and has created the lifestyle that I live today, which is still working in international education. So to kind of give some of those, it's just the laundry list of universities I've attended, some of which are in the US, many of which are not, in other countries, including Tajikistan and of course Iran, and then the university that I attended, the longest would be the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. So you can get an idea of some of the degrees that I've pursued and certifications and just my general study abroad experiences. I must note there, you'll see the little asterisk down at the bottom, the University of St. Andrews. I have to give a plug to that because it's recently been ranked as the best university in Britain. Yes, that beat out Cambridge and Oxford. There you go. I've got a shout out to my alma mater. So. Yeah, so we'll kind of jump through some of these slides. We want to talk about today international colleges, and starting off really with the title there, I suppose, and some terminology. I suppose that the title is possibly a bit of a misnomer because most higher education institutions here in the US are actually referred to as interchangeably often colleges or universities. But in fact, most of the universities overseas are referred to as universities. The term college, for example, in the United Kingdom, are where students go after completing compulsory schooling at the age of 16 to prepare for exams to get into university. So when you're talking to university reps or maybe possibly looking into on websites of international universities, there is going to be some sort of terminology difference, some definitions that you may want to be familiar with as well. And some of these universities may call themselves both college and university. So that's a whole nother conversation we could talk about later. But so just be sure and remember that depending on who you're speaking with, and you may need to check that terminology and what kind of research you're doing. In terms of that, we've kind of broken this slide down into 2 different parts. Really, you have universities in the English-speaking world, This is by no means comprehensive, but some of you must have heard at least one of these universities on the list. For example, obviously in the UK, you have Oxford, Cambridge, St. Andrews, I've already mentioned. Oxford in the world rankings is ranked second in the world. So this whole idea that I'm telling you that there are many options outside of the U.S. Now there are fantastic options in the U.S. That's obvious. That's going without said. But just kind of talking to you tonight about some of the options you may have outside of the United States for high quality global education opportunities. So, I had some questions in here, and some things maybe it's just kind of really rhetorical since we're not chatting, we're not having a discussion, and I actually can't see a chat or a chat box or anything else. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea. Think about how many universities are there in the United Kingdom, for example. There are 164 universities in the United Kingdom. And how many of those 164 are actually ranked in the top 100 in the world? Well, there are 8 of them. So 8 universities in the UK are ranked in the top 100 in the world. Now you compare that, to be fair, when you compare things, you have to look at the other side as well. So of those options, and these slides kind of go on their own timer, so they kind of just go do their own thing sometimes. So let's go back for a second. There you go. Maybe I'm taking too long. Where was I? So to kind of be fair to that, the top of what rounds out the top 100 list, there are 56 universities in the US that are in the top 100 rankings list compared to 8 in the UK. However, there are over 2,000 universities and colleges in the US, so a lot more to choose from. Other opportunities, all of the countries that I have listed here, as well as the universities, are going to be highly ranked. Rankings aren't everything, and we'll discuss that in a little bit as well, as we kind of think about opportunities overseas. So those would be like the main English-speaking world universities and destinations. There are going to be options that are English curriculum universities in non-English countries, non-English speaking countries, such as the Netherlands, Germany, Spain, Italy, etc. You can read those on the screen, and a lot more. These are some of the top ranked universities in the world. Again, like Maastricht University in the Netherlands is ranked 50th in the world. So that give you some perspective that the curriculum at Maastricht, as an example, is in English. You don't need to know Dutch there, and frankly, the Dutch citizens of the Netherlands likely speak English better than any of us do, the Native Americans and Native English speakers. Other English curriculum universities in non-English speaking countries would be some American University of. You may have heard a few of those, like American University of Paris, American University of Dubai, or Bulgaria, Cairo, American University of Athens, or American University of Beirut. There's quite a few, and so that's another option to look into if you want to go down that route as well. So to kind of start as the broad overview, why go international? If you ask me, I'm either the wrong person or the right person, depending on your own perspective. I'm the right person because I have intentionally internationalized my own education from undergraduate to graduate studies. So that was my intent, and it has led me to a very successful career in college counseling, as well as outside of college counseling, my career in higher education in general. So some of the things to keep in mind, to think about when we talk about going international, of the rankings, which we'll discuss in more depth in just a minute, as well as costs. International student fees at many universities, while significantly higher than what locals will pay, which is sometimes nothing, it can be much less than US private university tuition, or at least the cost of attending an out-of-state school. So things to keep in mind there. We'll get into a little bit more on that. I'm happy to take questions as well. Another factor, important factor, is financial aid. Many universities, overseas universities, especially in the United Kingdom, Canada, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Germany, etc., are vetted by the U.S. Department of Education, meaning they're accredited by the U.S. Department of Education. They hold the Title IV institutions, which doesn't mean much if you don't know what that means. It says that they are allowed to receive U.S. student loans. That said, that you are able to. I got to change this timing, huh? You are, sorry about that. You are able to apply any U.S. federal student loan toward the cost of tuition, housing, and any other living expenses that you may have while attending an accredited foreign school. That is how I was able to pay for and afford my 2 master's degree as well as my PhD. I was able to get U.S. loans. My PhD was the tuition part anyway was mostly funded, but the master's degrees weren't, and I was able to take U.S. federal loans for that. We'll get into more detail about that. Oh yeah, that last part was the degree and transferability. We'll go through that as we get a little bit further in. So when we talk about rankings, the map in front of you, you see the world university rankings of the top 800 universities, and you'll get an idea of how kind of spread out they are around the world. You'll be able to see how they are. Quite a few options in Australia, all over Asia. There's even from Singapore, Malaysia, China, Japan, South Korea, and then of course a large concentration in Europe. This is the UK, as you can see, it's covered quite well, and then of course the Republic of Ireland, and then the United States. So there'd be the English-speaking world. South African universities are, for the most part, also English-speaking. Some of them aren't. If you're interested in that, we can always have a sidebar conversation about those as well as you get into it. Rankings are a loaded topic. Really, we can talk about those in another full presentation, but overall, it's a big world out there, and other countries are educating their citizens just as well, if not sometimes better than we are here in the US. So it's good to be aware of the opportunities to study at top universities, top internationally recognized and ranked universities. So that's as we continue on. So circling back to the cost of tuition as well as financial aid. Costs, as I said, international student fees at many universities can be, are certainly going to be higher than what local students pay. Like in the UK, in Scotland anyway, Scottish residents don't actually pay any tuition. And in England, they pay very minimal tuition for English students anyway, at English universities. Germany, university education is free as well. So when you talk about international student fees, so for example, if we want to compare some options here in the US versus the United Kingdom, University of St. Andrews, this is all undergraduate tuition. You can see there is equivalent to about $35,000, $36,000 compared to, say, on the right side there, you see University of Southern California, USC, is about $60,000. Again, well, we'll get into the details here. I know that many of you are like, yeah, but we'll get into the but part. Don't worry. UCLA, again, in-state tuition. This is a California resident at $13,000. So obviously, you see the difference between in-state tuition versus a private university. Anyway, University of Oxford is about $39,000, so $40,000. And then UCL, University College London, is also about $40,000, compared again to Northwestern, which is similarly priced tuition as USC at around $60,000. Now, of course, that financial aid we talked about already, applying U.S. federal student loans. All 3 of the universities on the left side there at the United Kingdom, you're eligible to take any sort of U.S. Federal student loans that you take, that you receive, you're eligible for, just as you would if you were at any of these or any other U.S. university. Now, I have that little asterisk down at the bottom. This is not a full picture, as it does not take into consideration full cost of attendance or institutional aid packages. It only illustrates one element of attending university. Of course, cost of living needs to be, a factor of that. Obviously, if you can live at home and go to UCLA or, wherever, even USC, that affects the cost of living, right? So things to keep in mind when you're considering that. However, if you are considering a private university and living on campus, and you don't necessarily have much in terms of institutional aid or even outside grants or scholarships, you may want to consider, and a lot of students do. You know, when I was at the University of St. Andrews, I worked in the admissions office, reading U.S. student applications, and you know, we have a kind of a joke, is there's a lot of American students at the University of St. Andrews, just like there are at Oxford and UCL and King's College in London and London School of Economics and Politics. It's a very common thing to do, for sure. So yeah, we'll kind of move on from there. We talk a little bit more about degree types. This is probably the more confusing part: degree type, duration, and transferability of international degrees. So, I mean, there are common types of degree programs. You know, these common international undergraduate degrees and abbreviations, such as the Bachelor of Arts or the Bachelor of Science. The abbreviation for Bachelor of Science is internationally typically that BSc, as opposed to just a BS. Whereas the Bachelor of Arts is commonly the same, abbreviated as BA. So not too different. There are some special designations for the undergraduate degrees conferred at ancient universities in the UK and Ireland, such as the Master of Arts or the MA Honors, offered at the universities that are listed there, would be called the quote unquote ancient universities of the UK and Ireland, right? Because they were formed many years ago, and they're all quite old. So there's 4 of them in Scotland, 2 in England, and 1 in Ireland. The 4 in Scotland would be Aberdeen, Edinburgh, St. Andrews, and Glasgow, and then England would be Oxford, Cambridge, and the University of Dublin is in Ireland. And I put in the founding dates in parentheses next to them. So, for example, the University of St. Andrews was founded between 1410 and 1413. We celebrated our 600th birthday while I was there in grad school. And yeah, it was 600th birthday. 400, yeah, what's 200 years, right? When you're talking about that many years. So this can be sometimes confusing when you're looking at degree programs, and you say, well, it's an undergraduate degree. It says it is, but it says it's a Master of Arts. It is an undergraduate degree if it's a Master of Arts at one of these 6 universities. If it's a Master of Arts at any other university in the UK or Ireland, it is a graduate program, or what they would call a postgraduate program. So some things to kind of keep in mind when you're searching websites and hearing about different program options. They try to make it as clear as possible. But of course, at these institutions, these 6 ancient institutions, because they use the term Master of Arts for an undergraduate degree, it does change the postgraduate or graduate degrees and what they call them. So, for example, the 2 master's degrees that I hold are both Master of Letters, or MLit, and as you would have hopefully seen on that first slide with the list of the universities and degrees that I've earned. So that's just that designation. This is actually similar to, you may have seen it at Harvard, for example, the AM abbreviation. That is also an undergraduate degree. So because it does come from an old system, which is here, the Latin terminology, this kind of ancient, yeah, the ancient terms. So they've held on to tradition. Duration: undergraduate degrees in England are typically 3 years long. In Scotland, they are 4 years. Now that students often, this is one of the most common questions that student asks me about the duration of these degree programs and whether they're actually equivalent to a US 4-year undergraduate degree. And of course, Ireland is 3 to 4 years, depending on the institution. And they absolutely are equivalent. There are many instances, and pretty much everyone that earns a 3-year degree from an English university, and certainly a 4-year degree from a Scottish university, can get their records accredited, or rather evaluated and assessed, to be, and they will assess them as a 4-year US undergraduate degree. So that's that transferability. The vast majority of these degrees, you can read that for yourself, but that's certified evaluation based on that foreign transcript. There are many credential evaluation services here in the U.S. that do that. The cost is nominal. It's really not that expensive at all. So that's definitely something that kind of helps kind of assuage some of the concern regarding the transferability. One thing to note about the 3-year undergraduate degree in England specifically, that is also due to well, not due to, but there is a big big interest among English students specifically who are graduating from their A levels, and we'll get into that terminology as well. So graduating from high school essentially, to take a gap year. And then before they start their 3-year undergraduate degree in England. So the students that you may be joining in first year may be a year older. They may not be, but it is possible that they've taken that year off. So when they graduate after 3 years, they're essentially the same age as if you would be graduating after 4 years, if that makes sense. So now in terms of these credential evaluations, we want to talk, I do want to make a little side note about certain degree types. In terms of subjects specifically, there are going to be some exceptions to whether depending on what you want to study. There's going to be some exceptions on whether that's actually you're going to be best served at an international university or not. And there are some exceptions there, like I said, and your college counselor can help determine if an international university is the best path for you, considering your academic and career goals. So, and I'm happy to take questions about some of that later on as well. Yeah, so hopefully that's clear. This also comes into a bit more of what can also be challenging. A lot of questions around this. Requirements I've listed out. So it's kind of now really what you want to know. How do you apply for a university overseas? What are the requirements and how do I meet them? One of the great things about applying to a well-known university overseas, especially in one of the countries that I've already mentioned, like UK and Ireland, and across Europe, is that admissions officers and the admissions offices as a whole typically understand U.S. high school curriculum quite well. Whether you have friends that have attended an IB, whether it's and then specifically you have honors available, you have only AP, you don't have either one of them, you don't have grades, you don't have a GPA. We know that all of you are at Pali High, so we know that. But if you have friends that are at institutions like that, you can calm them by telling them that there's knowledgeable folks on the other side who understand what they're looking at when they look at your transcript. So typically, they're looking for rigorous curriculum at the high school level, including college preparatory courses. If offered. Again, if they're not offered, that's okay. It's all based on that specific your specific institution and whether it was offered. Same goes for honors and or advanced placement courses. Ideally, you've taken some, and certainly within the subject, within your intended subject. And so, to be competitive at these select universities, so I'm actually talking specifically at select universities, for example, using the UK as an example. So we're thinking about really any of the UK universities that you can think of. So UCL, King's, LSE, Oxford, Cambridge, St. Andrews, even Durham to that extent. Some of the more competitive universities. And in order for you to be competitive, you'll need to have A's and B's in honors level courses, or at least 3 AP subjects with a score of 4 or 5. Most of the universities now have gone test optional because they're aware of the situation, obviously globally, and it is. However, it is in your best interest to submit a test score if it is competitive, and we can discuss that as well. To be competitive in terms of scoring on some of these exams, if those of you that are considering taking either the ACT or the SAT, to really be competitive, you need to have a minimum of 28 or above, and on the ACT, and 1320 or above on the SAT. Again, at the highly selective universities in the UK, using this as an example. all test scores will be assessed. Many use super scores and rely on individual sub-scores holistically. So it is definitely in the UK system a holistic overview of your entire application, including very down to the specific course you took in 10th grade that actually is relevant to the intended subject, the intended degree. One thing also to note, some of you may be used to this or aware of it, no credit will be given for AP exams. So meaning they're not going to provide you 3 credits or whatever for taking the AP exam. So you're not going to get university credit for that internationally anyway. To kind of go off of what you guys see on the slide as well. These are the AAA you guys might have seen. This is again where the confusion is. What does that mean? This is the A levels. So this is what essentially that college preparatory, or sorry, university, using the term correctly, university preparatory curriculum that they have, which is essentially high school for our purposes anyway. And they're meant to take certain courses that they're meant to get A's or B's in. And you can get an A star or just an A or a B. It's these 3 different courses that you use for your admissions. Now, you guys won't be doing that, but that's what the English students, at least the English students do when they're applying for universities. And so that's what you'll see on university websites. So when you see 3 A's on there, it's equivalent to about 4 advanced placements at grade 5. So that tells you that it's actually quite a competitive program, quite a competitive application process for that degree, as well as the university itself. If you see an A plus AA, then that's going to be even more competitive. So you can just go up from there. Now, it's not like a mathematical equation where you must have that in order to even be competitive, because there are a lot more factors that go into your application. And then you can also think about like 3 A's equals 3 APs at grade 5 plus a 31 or higher on ACT or 1460 or higher on the SAT. So this is that combination that I'm talking about. So you can get fewer APs, but you have to do better on the tests, and then also have a higher GPA. This is a generalization. This is kind of the guideline that they use. Again, if you interact with a college counselor, they can actually be able to assess it a little bit better in your specific situation. Extenuating circumstances are something that I get asked about often as well, especially going overseas. They are usually considered when evaluating an application. For example, if you had a change in transferring schools, or challenging time when you had to transfer schools, you have family issues, health issues, anything like that, there is typically a place for you to actually address that, and it'll be reviewed holistically. The key overall, and this may be true across the board with admissions in a lot of places, but certainly overseas and certainly in the UK, is that they see academic progress. So you may be concerned about that B+ that you got, or A-, whatever it may have been that you received back in 10th grade. While not great, at the same time, especially again, if you're applying for a selective university, highly selective university, if you haven't done it since, and your grades have been on the right trajectory up, and you're seeing academic progress, then that's the main goal, and that's what's going to help you out quite a bit. Now into that, again, challenging part, the application systems, right? This is something that can be confusing to some. And let me take a drink of water before I get into it. We're almost done, don't worry. So in terms of the application systems, there are a few different application systems used when applying to international universities. Choosing which one to use usually depends on how many universities you intend applying to in that country, okay? I say that very specifically. For example, if you plan to apply to only the University of St. Andrews in the UK, and all your other applications were in the US or another country other than the UK, then you can apply directly to the University of St. Andrews or via the Common App, right? So that's if you're only applying to one university in the UK, you can apply directly or use the Common App, not a problem. However, if you plan on applying to more than one university in the UK, you automatically must use the UCAS system, which UCAS stands for the Universities and Colleges Admissions Service. And I've got timed out again. I'll give you a little preview. So that should, so the UCAS itself, you're only allowed to actually apply to 5 UK universities via UCAS. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that. Generally speaking, you have 3 options. You have UCAS, Common App, and applying directly. But there are rules to follow, like I mentioned about the UCAS system itself. And one more slide and we're almost finished. So in terms of the student life and academics, what to expect, these vary from institution to institution. That's true even here in the US, but generally speaking, overseas universities aren't as into sports, mascots, and certainly don't have football, meaning American football stadiums that hold 100,000 people. Intramural and club sports are very popular. They are a great way to get involved. Good way to learn a sport that you wouldn't necessarily have easy access to here in the US. For example, that top left photo there that you see is a photo of netball, which is a popular sport in Australia as well as Scotland, for example. It is a bit like basketball, but it is definitely different. But other sports that may or may not, depending on the institution, again, here in the US, like fencing or curling, these are actually quite popular in some universities, depending again on where we're talking about. But generally speaking, it's a great way to get involved in things you wouldn't normally have access to here in the US. Living situation, living environment, typically similar to here, shared dormitories or residence halls or resident colleges. That's right, one more confusion. They're called resident colleges in some places, or where most of the first year or freshman students live. Living off campus in student flats, which is the British version of apartments, are usually an option and quite popular after the first year, meaning after your freshman year. Homework and assessment, every university, and of course, subject and degree, can be slightly different. But for the most part, staying within the UK as in our example, students have a lot of reading with 2 to 3 writing assignments in the term, followed by either a comprehensive or a semi-comprehensive final written and timed exam. Again, we go back to the timed exam. All universities have systems in place to ensure each student is provided the appropriate assessment environment. For example, they will allow more time on exams if accommodations are requested and appropriate documentation is provided. So similar to a US university, you have all these options for you. So that said, that is kind of wrapping up here. I hope I've provided some food for thought when it comes to international opportunities, regardless of whether you're thinking of completing a full degree overseas or here in the United States. Be sure and take advantage of the, well, we're going to go back, the advantage of the free 30-minute consultations that we have here, as well as we're a great resource for information to be able to get that within that free 30-minute consultation. Also, don't forget to check out the College Center as a source of further information. Karen can provide more information about that as well. And thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Zach. This is Jenna from Great Expectations. I do not have any questions that have shown up in the Q&A box. If anybody is currently typing or thinking through things, we can wait a few minutes if you'd like, just to make sure. Oh, we do have one. All right. Our first question is, does the application process happen at the same time as the US?
It's a good question. And yes, and of course, in the US universities, every university may have a slightly different deadlines, but yes, typically it is in the same for the UK. For Australia and New Zealand universities, they are slightly different because their calendar system is different. Their academic calendar is different. So, good question.
Great. We have another one. Your presentation mentioned AAA equals 4 APs at grade 5. What is grade 5?
That's another good question. So, I mean, if you've taken an AP exam, you'll get a score, and that's again what different terminology, but a score of 5. And so, I mean, you can get, well, I mean, you don't want to get a 1 or 2, but it's possible to get a 3, 4, or 5 score when you take that AP exam, and that's what they mean by 5.
Great. Anybody else has
Had a
an-
raised hand. I think someone had, I don't know how we get
Yeah,
to
how
them,
do I, let's see. I think I can. Pamela, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was typing, but
Oh, there we go. Great, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just ask you. We were just interested that you said, thank you for the presentation, by the way. We were interested that you said that maybe students should take an AP their senior year for these colleges or universities that aren't in America. If she wants to major in something in college that there isn't an AP for at Pali High, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question, because like I said, as long as the applicant has actually, so your student has actually taken as many courses relevant to the degree that they could, she's not going to be penalized for not taking something that didn't exist for her, right? Does that kind of help? So if it doesn't exist, then that's fine. Now, you can always go find that course somewhere else, even if it's not AP, even if it's taking a course that's similar and during the summertime at the local community college. That would be an option to be a bit more competitive, to have that upper advantage of having taken a college level course in the subject. Does that answer your question, sort of? I hope.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. No worries. Thanks.
Excellent. Zach, we have another one. What is the application process like for students who have dual citizenship in an EU country?
Great question. So that's a really good question. So most countries, and again, I have to speak generally because not all of them follow the same rule, but when I say most, I mean like 99, 98% of them require residency. And there's a residency test, meaning you have to have to qualify to pay in-country tuition. So meaning you have to be living in that country and essentially be participating in the economy, because the universities are subsidized. Even in the UK, they're subsidized. In Germany, for example, they're highly subsidized, if not 100%. So the best place to start would actually be asking the university directly, because they will all have a fee status check and a process to get that fee status process, so the fee status check from you. So they will ask specific questions. And so there's a rubric that they go by to determine whether you're going to be charged international student fees or domestic fees. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a few more coming in, Zach, so we're
Yeah, that's great.
they're coming in. A few questions on AP exams and UK schools. One clarification is you were talking earlier about the scores getting a 5 on the AP exam from Pali. I think there's just a clarification on whether you were referencing the AP exam from Pali, which I think you were. And then the follow-up is, can the 529 fund be applied to study abroad?
I can't answer that 529 fund question, so
Okay.
I'm not sure if there may be I don't know if Karen or maybe somebody else would be able to or not, but yeah, no, that's a good question. I would have to search for that and try to get a better answer. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
And then what about the transfer process from a US college to an international university, or the other way around? What is the transfer process like?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple different things. So can't transfer from a U.S. Okay, I'm just reading the question. Yeah, okay. So, so for example, if you start off here at a U.S. university and then want to transfer to a university in the U.K. and finish your degree, that is possible and not unheard of, to be able to get credit for that. Now, if you did 2 years, like a 2-year degree For example, we paint the picture, you go to Santa Monica College or you go to anywhere else and you get, say, an associate's degree, and then you want to finish your do your 4-year degree in the UK, they will likely not give you 2 years worth of credit because, for the 2 years of that you've invested in, but they will give you some. Likely, possibly, an entire year. So what they have a process of, I could tell you specifically from the University of St. Andrews point of view for the admissions process, you can apply to first year, typically, like everybody else does, or you can apply into your second year. The second year admissions is more competitive, and they will be scrutinizing your transcript from that higher education institution here in the US, whether it be a community college or any other university. Just to see how well you've actually performed in higher ed. So post-secondary. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Excellent. You can see the questions too now, Zach, is that what you said?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Okay, if you feel, trying to go through a few here.
So I can answer this question, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we can kind of we can alternate here. So I can answer the question about the 4-year degree at University of Edinburgh be considered a master's here. No, so it would, University of Edinburgh, the undergraduate degree itself would be called Master of Arts, so MA Honors, but it would be evaluated and assessed as a US 4-year undergraduate degree. And so that was that explanation, just saying that they just call their undergraduate degrees at those 6 ancient universities. They call the undergraduate degrees Master of Arts. So yeah, that's it won't be a master's degree. Now, that said, there are some 5-year direct to master degree programs available at universities in the UK, but that's another topic.
Zach, there's 3 questions in there about the APs. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, keep them on the screen for a second. So yeah, I think we addressed the AP exam from Pali High. So yeah, I mean, it's just the AP exam that you actually take after you've taken your course. So that scores you out of a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So you need to have that 5, which is the top score. Typically, even a 4 is actually okay, depending on the degree. What I was giving you was the highly selective universities. So, if you've got a 3 or 4 on some of the APs, it doesn't mean that there's no chance. I'm just saying that for the highly selective universities, they're going to want to see those 5s and potentially 4s. So the other question, did you say that the UK schools will not accept APs? No, not at all. So they want to see your AP scores that I just mentioned, as well as the grades or the marks that you get on your transcript in those AP courses. So how you actually performed in the AP courses, as well as any honors courses that you may have taken. What I did say is that UK schools won't give you credit for them, like some US universities do. So if you've taken, if you took, for example, AP calculus AB, and you were able to go to a university that would possibly give you 3 credits of calculus for taking that exam and getting a 5 on it. That's possible here in the US, but in the UK, they don't do that at all. But they definitely want to see it for admissions purposes. They just won't give you they won't transfer any credit for that. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. So the deadline for UCAS, applications, I believe is well, it depends, but I believe it's actually in January. The February date doesn't ring familiar to me. So I believe it's going to be that earlier one. But that's easily looked up if you want to Google that deadline UCAS, and you'll be looking for international student UCAS deadline, because it is different from the domestic, than the English or the British student deadline. Let's see. Any advantage or disadvantage to attending UK university and undergrad for postgrad admission? For example, if applying for either international or US-based graduate school. Not quite sure what what the question is, yeah, so many, for example, well, I'm not even quite sure what the question is, to be honest. So I'm misunderstanding, I guess, in terms of the point. So I mean, just generally, I mean, I guess maybe, and maybe Jaden, if you can maybe clarify, if you're still on there, being able to, if you're talking about the advantages of attending a UK university, either for undergrad, to be able to then use that as leverage to apply for postgrad in the UK. That's one version. That's one question. But yeah, I think that question maybe needs some clarification. And Jenna, maybe you can help me. Maybe it's late for me. I don't know. It's very possible. Jaden, if you're still on, if you can maybe just ask the question again in a different way, or even pop up and raise your hand, and we can maybe get an audio. Pamela, you've asked another question.
Zach, sorry, this is Jenna
Yes.
real quick. I just tried to allow Jaden to ask the question, but it says there's an old version of Zoom. So Jaden, I'm going to type back to your answer here on the Q&A and give you some follow-up information too. So that way he can always follow up with the office, and Zach can get you a more detailed answer if you'd like. Yeah,
that'd be great. Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate it. So Pamela writes, my daughter's friend is going to an international university and had to take the IBM test. Do you know what that is and whether they need them? I don't. It's probably referring to the IBs, or the International Baccalaureate test. And if that's the case, it's only because that your daughter's friend is going, attended a high school that was on the IB, or the International Baccalaureate system. So you do have to have an IB test, which is similar to, you know, an ACT or an SAT. You know, it's a comprehensive exam after you once you finish your program at an International Baccalaureate high school. So that's probably what they're talking about. So no, it would not be relevant to your situation.
Zach, there's an earlier question about music conservatories. I don't know how detailed or specialized you are on the specific programs, but any guidance on where to help direct them, maybe?
Yeah. So it's a great question. You know, I'm definitely not an expert in music conservatories, but you know, there are plenty. I know even the University of St. Andrews has a newly built facility for it, and then of course there's going to be a lot in London and other parts of the UK. In terms of qualifications, you know, music is almost like math. You know, it's an international language, right? So or universal language, I should say. You're definitely going to find some high quality programs, and similar to conservatories here in the US, you're going to have to submit, you know, videos and recordings of whatever your talent may be. It's a bit like a portfolio for that. So yeah. And in terms of finding information, I mean, you know, you know, just looking specifically at the universities available, you know, a simple Google search might at least direct you to some of the options that you have. You know, and if you're ready to start digging deeper and wanting to explore that a little bit more, it is something that I'm happy to help with later on as well. So, let's see, again, an AP question, and see would it help if my child took AP courses at Pali, even if the course doesn't apply to the subject they want to study? Yes, absolutely. The more AP courses and done well, the better, especially for a highly selective university in the UK, for example, or even anywhere internationally. AP exams, AP courses, honors courses, and then of course any of those the actual standardized exams of the SAT and ACT are really going to be the primary way to set you apart from other international applicants. That and your essays. You know, I always push my students to, like, it's the only thing you can really control at this point is how well you write your essays. So that's definitely a key, especially for the UCAS system, because it's character specific, character limits, and it's a very different way of writing than it is for kind of for the US universities. So yeah. Okay, so Jaden's asked another question. Yes, is there a disadvantage to applying for US-based graduate school after receiving a UK undergraduate degree? Okay, great question. No, there really isn't. You know, you kind of put yourself in this situation. If you have an undergraduate degree from Oxford, do you think that you would be eligible to apply for a master's in, you know, whatever the subject may be at UCLA? Absolutely. You're coming from the second ranked university in the world, so you're definitely going to be at an advantage over anyone else. Now, that said, even if you go to a university in the UK that isn't, you know, Oxford or isn't Cambridge or St. Andrews, there's still, you know, many highly ranked universities in the UK. Again, I keep repeating the UK option, but there are a lot of other options that are also highly ranked as well in the top 100 in the world. So there is no disadvantage. The only one, and this is very subject specific, the only one that I would steer clear of is that if you plan on studying medicine here in the or even a grad school here in the US, and you plan on being a doctor here in the US, you should stay here in the US. That would be the one exception to really all of what I'm saying in terms of that transferability of degree. You know, it's a completely different setup in terms of studying medicine in the UK. So hopefully that answers your question, Jaden. Okay. Application process for students who have dual citizenship. I think we've already answered that question. I don't know if Ivan, you were the one that asked that before or not. So yeah, the dual citizenship EU country. I don't know if that one was still there or was it? I guess that's a relatively new question. So maybe I would hear the answer. So yeah, it really depends on residency. Residency is based on you living in that country. So that is established by the university, and it'll be a fee status question that you'll need to ask the admissions office at the university to determine your fee status based on your residency. And if you're a resident here in the US, meaning you reside here, live here, your parents work here, all that, then chances are you will be considered, regardless of your citizenship, be considered an international student. But there are always exceptions, so it's best to check with the university overseas specifically about your fee status.
But thank you, Zach, so much for all of your information and wealth of knowledge. Thank you to Pali High School for hosting us and letting us share this information with you. Any follow-up questions or any details or personalized things that you'd like, your Pali Career Center is a great, College Center is a great resource for you to start, and we are happy to help as well. All of our information is on the slide too. So I think with that, we are set. Anything else?
Thank you all. Appreciate it. No, that's great. Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.